I have had the misfortune of coming across a few scary guys in my life. My friends will say I'm a weirdo magnet, so I'm pretty wary and clued up now that I'm a bit older. But when I was a teenager, I suppose you could say I was very naive. Back when I was 20, I and my family, my mom and little sister, had moved from a small rural village in the Shires to a town down south. It was a huge change, and as I had been having a difficult time, I welcomed the change of scenery. It was a beautiful town in an affluent part of the country, but I struggled to find a job and became very frustrated as my mom needed a bit of help with money. Over the course of about 3 months, we became fairly friendly with a middle-aged guy who owned a takeaway shop in town. I will call him Phil. If he saw us doing some shopping, he would come and chat and ask how the family was, and he genuinely seemed like a decent, caring bloke. So when he said he might have a job for me, in his shop with a small flat upstairs I could rent for next to nothing, I thought, okay, great. Maybe things are looking up. Phil got our address and told me and Mom he would pop by early evening when he had finished and take me in the car to go and see the flat. I get myself looking fairly casual but presentable, and I'm feeling excited and confident thinking, wow, a job in a flat. I've killed 2 birds with 1 stone here. I just need to show him I'm sophisticated and would make a great employee. Around 8 p.m., he knocks on the front door and Mom answers. He tells her we will probably only be about half an hour and he will have me back safe and sound in no time. Now I didn't take my phone with me as I had no credit to call out and didn't think I would be needing it for a quick trip up the road and back. In hindsight, a pretty stupid thing to do. Maybe if I had my phone on me, it would have deterred him from what he was about to do. It's already dark out as it's March. I get into his car and we start driving and he is chatting away, asking how I am and telling me what the flat is like. When within a matter of a few minutes I've noticed that we are not taking the conventional route that takes us directly into town. At first I think he is taking me down some sort of shortcut round the town to get to it and just reason with myself that he knows the area well and I don't. 30 seconds after I realize he is taking me in the completely opposite direction, and I can tell that we are driving away from the populated town and into an area where trees swamp both sides of the road. My brain is now working overtime thinking where the fuck is this guy taking me, and I just about manage to keep my composure, and I ask him outright, where are we going? Town's back the other way. I just thought I would take you on a little tour. It's beautiful here, with many forests and peaceful places I would love to show you. He tells me in his normal cheery tone. I wasn't capable of saying anything at that moment because the logical and the reasoning sides of my brain were in a full-blown war. I'm trying to keep calm, thinking, okay, he seems fairly normal. Why wouldn't he want to show me around? It is a stunning area full of natural beauty. He is probably proud to show me where he lives. The logical side, however, disagreed and a wave of panic comes over me, and a little voice enters my head and shouts, shit, no, are you stupid? So I just sit there in silence, taking in the scenery, which is becoming more sinister by the second because at that moment in time, I didn't know what to think. All I know is every cell in my body is screaming at me to find a way out of this situation. I started looking for signposts, houses, any distinctive landmarks, ditches, huge trees, or anything that would be able to use to recognize my way back if I had to bolt from his car. Phil can obviously sense I'm nervous, so he is just talking away at me about what the job is like and how his staff are friendly, and before I know it, he has slowed down to a crawl, and he has turned down a little mud rut road with a dense tree line on one side and pitch black open fields on the other. My stomach literally drops, and my body contemplates power vomiting all over his car because the reality of what is about to potentially happen hits me like a freight train. I'm thinking to myself, if I jump out here, I have to be able to run over muddy fields into literally nowhere, but my imagination starts rather helpfully flashing by images of him grabbing me before I get a chance to get out the door. So I just sit there buckled in the passenger seat, not saying a word. I'm just thinking to myself, if he attacks me, don't make a sound. Don't give him the satisfaction of showing him I'm scared. My brain was about as useful as a chocolate teapot, and I was starting to get angry with myself for not doing something, but I was terrified. We come out at the top of this little dirt road, and there is a tiny little car park surrounded by woodland with one car parked in it. It was clear there were people in there having sex, and as he pulls near the car, I realize he has brought me to a local dogging spot. He turns to me and puts his hand on my knee. We should do what they are doing, with a deadly serious expression on his face. I make this bizarre half-nervous laugh, half-garbled high-pitched whine, and I try to laugh off the suggestion to show I'm not into it, and I'm super uncomfortable right now. The alarmed expression on his face at my gurgled cackle which sounds like I've swallowed a potato whole, clearly freaks him out, and I'm mentally congratulating myself for my socially awkward and grossly unsexy reaction. It will be fun. No one will see us. He persists. No, I don't want to. Plus, I'm kind of seeing someone right now. I lie, but he sits there just smiling at me like a Cheshire cat, like I'm going to miraculously change my mind at the sight of his weird face. Mom will be expecting me home now. I tell him after an insanely uncomfortable 30 seconds more of this as I try my damn hardest not to make eye contact. I'm sure she won't mind you being out a bit longer with me. You can trust me, you know. He tells me with a straight face as we sit next to the sex wagon parked next to us. I sharply pull my leg away from his grip and I tell him again. Mom is waiting for me. She will start panicking if I'm not home in the next few minutes. Take me home. I look him straight in the face and he knows that I'm not messing around. Okay, that's fine. I'll take you back now. Without another word, he drives me out of that creepy, seedy place and back home. My finger is hovering over the seatbelt button, ready to jump out. As we pull up outside our home, I breathe a sigh of relief as I can see my safety literally a few feet away, and before he can stop me, I'm out and slam the door behind me. As I'm stepping over a tiny little rope fence around our garden, he gets out of his car and my heart sinks. I think I'll pop in and see your mom quickly, he tells me, and I swear I can see a smirk on his face, but I know he is only doing this because he is freaking out knowing damn well I'm going to tell her. He was trying to delay the inevitable or scare me into keeping my mouth shut. Before I can try and talk him out of it, Mom has heard us pull up and open the front door. I barge past her with one thought on my mind. I head straight into the kitchen, grab a small knife out of the drawer, and fly into my little sister's room like a mad woman. Don't you dare fucking leave this room no matter what you hear, I whisper to her. Seeing the knife I am stuffing up my sleeve, she just looks at me with panic in her eyes and whispers back, okay. I walk back into the living room and the cheeky twat is sitting on one sofa, sprawled out, comfortable as fuck like he is at home. I see red. I swear to God I felt like the Hulk. I'm ready for the bastard. I awkwardly perch myself on the arm of the sofa Mum is sitting on, the absolute furthest away from him I can manage, as he just sits there making small talk with Mum about how she is finding the area and if the neighbors are friendly, all the while keeping his beady little weasel eyes on my every move. Why don't you come and sit over here next to me? He pats the sofa cushion next to him. No, I'm all right here, thanks. I tell him as I'm fidgeting with my sleeve, trying to stop the little knife from falling out in front of him. Why are you sitting over there? Come here. Honestly, I won't bite. He laughs and pats the seat next to him again. No, I am quite comfortable here. Thank you very much. This time through gritted teeth. My mum, bless her, is looking at each of us during this back and forth like a tennis match, and I can see something is registering in her eyes. She can see my behavior is all off. I've got one bum cheek weirdly perched on the sofa arm, so I'm half stood up, half sat down, and I'm fiddling about with my sleeve. I'm twitchy as hell and staring my mum in the face intensely, mentally trying to speak to her through the power of telepathy alone. I must have looked like a nutter. It's getting late now, so I think you should go. She finally speaks. Mom is starting to look anxious now as she has finally twigged that something has happened. Phil gets up, agrees, and mumbles something about having to check something at his shop when he walks by me and is nearly out of the room when he pauses and turns to me and puts out his hand to shake mine. I'm thinking to myself what a fucking weird thing to do. I take the opportunity to kindly offer him my hand that had the knife. Taking it with a bit more force than is polite, he soon yanked his grubby mitt out of mine. When the tip of the blade had jabbed him, he looked down and saw the blade. Then he looked at me. I looked at him with such disgust. Bill hightailed it out of our home so fast without another word. A prick for a prick. I told Mom everything. She was fuming. We did discuss going to the police, but there wasn't really a crime committed on his part aside from being a major creep. Sadly, when I mentioned to a couple of girls my age who lived down our street, they clammed up and shot each other a strange look. I guessed he had probably done this type of thing before. We moved away from the area after that, so I'm glad to report I never have to see his smug face ever again. I deliver pizza, and I'd been having a really busy night. Non-stop back and forth, without any time to even pause and take a leak. I'd been so busy that I wasn't really thinking about bathroom breaks. But we're also going through a bit of a heat wave in our area, so I've been drinking copious amounts of water. All of a sudden, as I was driving to this particular delivery, the urge to go hit me. Like things went from 0 to 60 in an instant. Thankfully, I was close to the customer, so I could get this one over with quickly. Or so I thought. I pulled up to the house, and it was an area I'd delivered in before, so I could immediately see that something wasn't right. All the lights were off in the house, not even the glow of a television or anything. It was extra apparent because the streetlight closest to the door happened to be out of order, and on top of it all, the block was dead quiet. This is a big university area, and obviously there aren't many student renters in July, but there had to be at least one person because someone ordered this pizza. Maybe they just liked sitting in the dark, or they were out back in the yard. Whatever. I just didn't want to get out of my car and knock on a quiet house in the middle of the night, around 9:30 p.m., without first checking that I had the correct address and the customer was inside. It was scorching that night, even after sundown. My car's AC is a joke, and the piping hot pizzas don't help things much, so I have to try and open the car door as infrequently as possible to keep any cool air in. I called the number the customer provided, and the voice on the other end said, kind of brusquely and out of breath, "Yeah?" I just tried to keep it clear and concise. "Hey, it's your pizza out front, but there doesn't appear to be anybody home." And the customer replied, still gasping for air, "Yeah, I'm not home." I had to pee so badly by that point that I was much less patient than I'd otherwise be with a customer right out of the gate. "Well, then we're going to have to terminate the order because I've arrived in the stated delivery window and you were supposed to pay in cash, so I don't know what to tell you. Plan ahead next time." I instantly regretted letting my bladder do the talking for me, as the voice on the other end came through more clearly as a young, bubbly, and very distraught girl who couldn't have been older than 20 or 25. "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I was running down the street so I could barely hear you," she cried. "I just switched you out of my AirPods. Is that better? Sorry, I completely lost track of time at work, but I knew you were coming. That's why I'm literally running home right now. Please don't leave. I'm starving and I don't have a car. Seriously, please don't leave. 5 minutes tops, okay? I know what it's like to be hungry and running late and have no car but not live near any restaurants." Plus, when I heard her voice, I began to remember more specifically having delivered to this place a couple of times before, and she'd always been perfectly nice. Now I felt bad for snapping at her. I tried to walk it back, while simultaneously looking out my window for potential spots to pee. No, my bad. I'm letting the heat get to me, and it's not your fault. No need to rush. See you when you get here. I hung up, and while surveilling the street, was starting to think I was really out of luck. All the other houses had people in them and were close together, so there were no clumps of trees or out-of-the-way patches of land or anything. Of course, I had just tossed my empty water bottle at the last delivery because I'm an idiot. Finally, I decided it was escalating to the point of an emergency, and the safest bet was to use a bush in front of the woman's house. She wasn't home. The street light was out, so no one would see me. The people who were home were inside. My car was parked across the street, and we're a small shop that doesn't wear uniforms, so if someone did spot me, they'd have no way to connect me to my employer. Animals pee outside all the time. Humans are animals. This is fine. I scurried over to the tallest bush in her front yard. She didn't really have much of a yard, more just a walkway lined with bushes and flowers that ran adjacent to her front door. The biggest cluster of bushes, the only one where I could be sure there would be no visible splatter on the side of the house, was about 4 feet from her door. I looked both ways, unzipped, and let fly. After the initial millisecond of relief, I noticed the sound was way off, more like pissing on something solid than something leafy. I started panicking, thinking I'd aimed wrong. But once I start, I can't stop midstream, so I keep squinting into the darkness to see if maybe I am hitting a key rock or something and could just move a few inches over. Instead, all of a sudden, I heard a way more concerning noise. A deep voice exclaiming, "What the fuck?" And before I could turn around, assuming I'd been caught by a neighbor, a man came leaping out of the bushes. He blew by me, brushing my golden shower off him as he did. He spit pretty emphatically on the ground, so I think I might have beamed him right in the face. I didn't see where he went after a few paces, but though this next part is kind of a blur, I do think I remember hearing a car screech out from a bit further away after a minute. I'd gotten some night vision by that point, so I was able to make out his height, build, and outfit, but only the most general details of each. I was in such shock that I didn't even put my dick away. I just stood there trying to figure out what had happened. The reality was so terrifying that my mind refused to accept it and impulsively searched for a reasonable explanation that could make everything okay. I thought, could these bushes lead to some backyard area and just look like they were against the house? Could they have been obscuring an open window? My inner voice was desperately screaming, bruh, that man was wearing a hoodie in 90-degree weather. That was a bad man. You're in a bad situation. But the very idea that I was within inches of a guy who would be hiding in bushes at all, let alone in front of a young woman's house at night, just wasn't something I was ready to grapple with yet. I was coping by not coping. My fight-or-flight response totally failed me at that point, because my dumbass did the absolute last thing I should have done, and approached the bushes to try and validate this. There must have been a good reason for a man in a hoodie to be behind these bushes in the middle of the night. Theory. So I walked over to the side, turned on my phone flashlight, and tried to peer around the line of shrubbery. Pro tip. As scary as things may look in the dark, seeing them with a single beam of your flashlight can sometimes make it even worse. That's when I saw the bag. There was a tattered drawstring bag sitting behind the bushes, slightly splashed with pee. But I was in such a moronic daze from shock that I groped around for it thinking, see, this is it. This will explain why he was back here. It explained it. Once I maneuvered it over and pulled it open, I saw a sharp knife, a roll of duct tape, and a bottle of pills. The delusions officially broke at that point, and all the adrenaline, endorphins, and self-preservation instincts that had been suppressed kicked in 10 times over. I became whatever the opposite of dazed is, more laser-focused than I have ever been in my life, with one singular goal: get back to my car. I dropped the bag, booked it across the street, got in my car and slammed the pedal to the floor before the door was even all the way closed. I went as far as I could as fast as I could until I hit a red signal. Then I pulled off to the side and realized I shouldn't be driving any more than necessary in the condition I was in. I pulled into the parking lot of a 24-hour drugstore and took a breath. I was finally calm and coherent enough to zip up and formulate a plan of action. My first lucid thought was, who do I call first, the police or the girl whose house that was? I thought about it for what couldn't have really been more than 10 seconds, but it felt like an hour, and I decided, okay, I'm in my locked car with the engine running. If trouble starts, I can drive away. I know something's up. She might not. She needs to know not to keep walking in that direction. But as I was dialing her number, it occurred to me, what if there was no girl? I thought I remembered delivering to that house before, but what if I was wrong? What if the girl on the phone was just a decoy to get me there to rob me? Or worse. Every pizza guy on the planet has seen the Evil Genius documentary by now, so I thought. She called me all out of breath. She wasn't home. The whole thing was off. I can't risk it. I'll start with the cops. I called 911. The operator was very helpful in keeping me calm because I was a complete wreck by this point. He kept assuring me that someone would be there soon. I kept telling them they had to get there before the girl did. But I was trying to express 3 thoughts at once, and I was really damaging my own credibility. It came out more as, you've got to save this girl because he wasn't after me. I was just delivering a pizza. Unless they were after me, in which case there might not be a girl. But I talked to one on the phone, so then you should find that girl because they used her to lure me there. But if she's real, she doesn't know about the guy, who was also real, and there could be more guys if there's actually a girl. And you know what? Even if there isn't a girl, there might actually be more guys. I only checked one part of the bushes, so I don't actually know. But we'll know which guy is the one I saw because I pissed all over him, you know. I didn't mean to. This was back when I thought the girl was real, but not home. But she might be real, so you really need to find her if she is. Because the guy was real. Finally, they basically just asked me to stop talking and stay on the line. But that was when I saw an incoming call from the customer. I couldn't answer it without disrupting my 911 call, so I just ignored it. But then she sent me this text like, "Hey, I'm here, don't see you." I told 911 she was there, and they said officers were only minutes away. But who knows how long that meant, especially after I'd given such a scattered account of the events in my panic. I just felt overwhelmed with guilt, because my rational mind said the odds of her being a decoy girl for some large scam targeting pizza guys were low, and the odds of her being the intended victim of a predator were high. So I put my 911 call on mute, where I can hear them but they can't hear me, and turned back, my heart absolutely pounding out of my chest, compulsively muttering, "Fuck," the entire way. Then I took 911 off mute and told them I had returned to look for the girl. They weren't happy about that, but I saw her meandering past the parked cars in the street, looking to see if one was mine, and I waved her down, flashing my brights. She bounced on over to the window of my car, happy-go-lucky. I figured that was a good sign that she wasn't in on whatever this was. But I was just so scared to be back in the general area and to not know what had just happened or what was going to happen. I kept whispering, "Get in, get in." And she was like, "Get it, huh? Oh, you want me to get the pizza from the back?" I didn't want to make the same mistake with her that I had made with 911, so instead of trying to tell the whole story, I stuck to the bare basic facts. There was a man in your bushes. I'm on the phone with the police. I don't know where he is right now. Please get in the car so we can lock the doors. I was barely able to get even those sentences out, and I was shaking like I'd had 10 cups of black coffee. I held up my phone with 911 on the call screen to verify it for her. I thought that was why she got in the car with no further explanation, but it turns out that wasn't entirely it. "You still there? Is she with you? Are you safe? Is anyone else there?" The dispatcher kept checking in, not knowing who the third party I was talking to was. I reassured them, and we drove, more cautiously this time, to a location 911 instructed us to wait at to speak with police after they cleared the area. I didn't actually have to do much after that. The police came pretty soon after. A police car met us. I gave a statement telling them everything I observed, and she went to go speak to more officers in more detail than they needed me for. It turns out, the reason she got right into a strange pizza guy's car, without probing any deeper into my story, is because she knew who the man was right away from my description. She had an abusive ex-boyfriend who was apparently psychotic enough that he immediately came to mind from hearing, "There's a guy in your bushes." She later called us to thank me and insist on leaving a huge tip. I wasn't there when the call came in, so the kid who answered didn't know to refuse to accept the money. But the manager already promised the next time we see her we can load her up with enough one free pie cards to last a lifetime. Easily the scariest thing that has ever happened to me, on the job or off. I don't get the chance to tell the story much because I try to avoid sharing it with anyone who could possibly know the girl or know of the event. But I'm still not the same since. Even though I know he didn't even have anything to do with me directly, this truly shook me to my core. This may be a ramble of thoughts, but after recently stumbling on this sub, I finally felt a place I could offer something that my family and I experienced a few years ago that to this day gives me a shiver. I have been camping, solo backpacking, and hunting my whole life in Oregon and felt comfortable in the woods and have a deep respect for nature. A few years ago, my wife, daughter, and 2 German shepherds went camping north of Mount Jefferson, Oregon. I have included the coordinates of our campsite, which we found to be the perfect setup for us and our 2 dogs, who need the privacy since they are intimidating to other dog owners and can be loud when spooked. It was not an established campsite, just a nice horseshoe, off a USFS road that had flat ground, full trees, and a fire pit. The first night my daughter wanted to sleep by herself in a 2-man tent right next to ours. It was maybe 2 feet away from me and my wife's tent. We made the male German shepherd sleep, Guts is his name, with her in the tent. That whole first night, neither my wife nor I could sleep. We both heard footsteps, and they were heavy, not like typical forest critters scampering around the night. I was well armed because I was paranoid from reading recently, before departing, about a dad in California who was shot and killed in a tent next to his 2 infant daughters. Needless to say, both my wife and I had 2 pistols and my rifle with me. The dogs are great at detection, and that is why I felt my daughter could sleep alone, because Guts is completely fearless, and nothing would lay a hand on her without a battle to the death. All in all, nothing but bad vibes and loud footsteps occurred that night, which I ultimately decided was deer or maybe some elk. Day 2. Morning. We go for a walk down the road, and maybe 300 feet away, I see the circular area in the photo. I see an abandoned road where a rusted gate post. The gate was missing, was covered in vegetation. Something of blue color caught my eye, and Guts immediately took off running down this abandoned road. My heart began to race because I thought it was another family camping like us, and he was going to get himself shot or scare some innocent people to death. So I chased after him as fast as I could, and the rest followed. He stops after 20 feet into the road and me yelling his name, but I have covered just enough distance to see that there's nobody there and something is off about the site. I yell, "Hello, is anyone there? Sorry about the dog." I got no response. My curiosity gets the best of me, and I have to see what the site conditions were. As I get closer, I know something is wrong. It had all the necessities for a campsite, including a cooler, propane burner, tent, blankets, and folding table. But every single item had been completely destroyed, smashed and torn from what appeared to be claw marks. We all walked around in circles, puzzled why anyone would leave all their camping gear behind, including an expensive REI tent. I figured, well, someone left in a hurry and animals got to the rest as the only logical explanation. Still, a propane tank and cooler were flattened by something, and it certainly wasn't snowpack with tree coverage in that spot. As the afternoon rolls in, my daughter and I are playing bocce ball at the campsite, and my wife goes walking maybe 70 feet north to do her business. I do not have a direct line of sight on her, but all of a sudden I see Guts make a mad dash straight towards her. Normally he would always be with me unless he was called over, and she didn't call for him. His speed and focus caught my attention, and I knew something weird was happening, so I ran over there, and my wife starts jogging at me, and I immediately draw my pistol. Guts has completely continued running into the forest another 100 feet before I call him, and he stopped. My other dog, Leia, who never misses the opportunity to be the pack leader, is not taking point. I have had her for now 7 years, and this was the first time in her life she refused to leave my daughter's side. She was full of hair raised and attached to us at the hip. Again, anytime we hike or play, Leia is up front, bossing everything in her path, and pauses to look to see where we are and continues. I asked my wife what happened, and she said, "I was trying to pee, and all of a sudden I felt all my hairs raise. I knew someone was watching me, and then I saw Guts running towards me, and I just got up to move towards you." We spent 10 minutes looking for signs of anything and saw no trails, broken branches, or anything to point to what and where something went. We decide we are spending one more night since it's too late to pack up and drive, but we will all be in the big tent together. Before we go to bed, I put a rope with a makeshift coin alarm around the perimeter of our campsite. I used a mint can and some coins and keys from our truck, and zip-tied it so anything hitting the rope gave a little jingle. Very unsophisticated, but it put my wife at ease. As I go to tie my last corner off at a tree near our tent, our third mystery item unveils itself. It looks like someone has done the same exact thing I have done with a rope that was so old and brown I didn't see it at first. It was broken, and only a few pieces remained, but sure enough, it was tied at roughly the same height, approximately 8 to 10 inches off the ground, and even had a few rusted washers on it. I immediately felt someone had stayed here before and put the same makeshift warning system on the same tree. Maybe 10 to 15 years ago, based on the condition of the rope. Perhaps my paranoia has now reached a new height, but I had to make sure the girls felt we were safe, and at the time the only thing I could think of was when the evening came around, I made them sit in the truck, and I fired a clip of my .45 into the dirt as a signal to whatever was out there that we were armed. I reassured the girls that anybody listening to that now knows we have 2 wolves and are armed, and we are too risky of a target, so we can sleep safely. That night we heard no footsteps, and the dogs never perked up and barked. We left early the next morning. Fast forward to today, and I watched the Amazon Missing 411 Hunted documentary, and I noticed the cluster smack dab close to where we camped that weekend, and a flood of dread rushes over me as I think of that mysterious abandoned campsite with the ripped tent and smashed cooler and cooktop. We have been camping since and have enjoyed the beauty of the NW, but there was something there at that place that possibly took or harmed someone else less than 300 feet away from where we camped, and we all thank our lucky stars. Guts was doing his thing so well that afternoon. I live in Finland in a fairly small city. This happened to me a year ago when I was 14. So it was Friday evening, and on every Friday, our mom let us go to the store and buy candy. So my 12-year-old sister and I left our house to go to the store, and it was already dark outside. We made our way to the closest store, which was over a mile away. While walking at some point, there's a man behind us walking the same way, but I didn't think much about it at the time. He could be just going to the same store. So I continue chatting with my sister while the man is behind us, following at a safe distance. We got to the store with no complications, and the man followed us into the store. We take our time selecting our candy and get to the register to pay. While I was packing the candy to my backpack, I saw this man buying only a chocolate bar. Pretty far way to go for a chocolate bar, I thought, and at this point my suspicions start to rise for this guy. I get out of the store with my sister and we start making our way back. We walked for a while and I quickly glanced back and the man was still there following us. I took a look at my sister, who seemed totally unaware of the man's presence. We continued our walk, and up ahead of us was an unlit dirt road that continued for a good part of the trip. So I looked back again, and there the man still was, about 60 feet away. At this point, I was almost certain that he was following us because on our way to the store, he did not walk this part of the way behind us. The dirt road goes through a forest, and it had a curve at the start of it. Once we get to the curve, I look back and notice that the man can't see us. So I pull my sister to the woods, and we duck down in the woods. My sister is saying something, and I just whisper, "Stay quiet," to her as I wait for the man to come. I could see the man's shadow coming down the road, and he started looking for us from the road. He walked back and forth on the road. Now I was certain he was following us all that time. My heart was racing, and I tried to be as quiet as possible. The man didn't find us, but continued running forwards. We stayed in the forest for a while before getting the courage to come out. We walk the rest of the way home with no problems and get to our house. We eat our candy and have a good evening, but that really did bother me for a while, and especially my sister. Thinking about this still gives me the chills, and the thought of getting caught in that situation creeps me out, and I try not to think about it. I wouldn't want to meet this guy again. It was the summer before my senior year in college. My little brother, always interested in military stuff, had gotten a pair of night vision goggles for his birthday, and he'd left them at my apartment. One night I was bored and decided to go try out the goggles at a wooded hiking area preserved nearby. In retrospect, this seems like a very stupid idea since I was all by myself, and female. But I was young and stupid, and I got myself all excited at the possibility of seeing deer and other woodland creatures in their natural nighttime habitat. I was familiar with these woods. My best friend and I had hiked there at night before, and we'd never run into anyone else. Our area is mostly rural and pretty safe, so I didn't anticipate any trouble. I parked in the little sparsely lit parking area, ignored the sign "Park closes at 10", and entered the woods, night vision goggles in hand. It was a half moon that night, and that was the only light that filtered down through the canopy of trees. It was pretty dark, and I didn't want to put on the goggles until I'd found a place to sit down. So I lit my way with the mini mag light on my keychain. A couple of times I thought I heard a little rustling in the woods a fair distance away, but it was nothing out of the ordinary, and I put it down to animal activity, hopefully the deer I'd come hoping to see. After I'd hiked in a fair distance, I found a fallen log to sit on and put on the goggles. I don't know if you've ever used night vision goggles before, but the effect is impressive. They can turn near pitch darkness into bright as day. Everything appears in shades of green, but quite bright and clear. For a while, I had a blast looking around from my fallen log vantage point. Some chipmunks played around in the leaves nearby, and a big owl blinked its lamp-like eyes at me from a tree branch. No deer though, and I started to think that maybe they wouldn't be likely to come anywhere near me, darkness or no, if I sat right out in the open on a log. So I decided to find a place where I could be a little more hidden. I made my way a little deeper into the woods and finally found a huge tree, perfect for climbing. I've always loved climbing trees, so it was nothing for me to hoist myself up a few branches and settle in to wait for my deer. I didn't get to see any. What I did see, lit up in bright night vision green after about 10 minutes of waiting, was this. A man, dressed head to toe in dark-colored clothing, making his way stealthily through the woods. He was coming from the same direction I'd come and was clearly trying to stay hidden. Moving from tree to tree and glancing around carefully before moving on again. It looked very much like he was looking for someone. It took me a few moments to notice that he was carrying something, and when I saw what it was, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. He had a knife, a big one, and he was gripping it as if he expected to use it in the very near future. It wasn't deer hunting season, and this was a nature preserve where hunting of any kind was prohibited, and at any rate, the guy was alone and not dressed like a hunter. There were no deer in sight, and very few hunters kill their prey with knives. I was suddenly horribly aware of my situation. A young woman alone, weaponless, in the middle of the woods at night. This was the 90s, so no cell phones, and even if I'd had one, I wouldn't have felt safe using it lest I draw his attention. I didn't know how he was able to see so well in the dark. I guess his eyes had just adjusted, and I was terrified he would look up and see me. I sat there, afraid to move, afraid to breathe, and watched him as he continued his methodical and stealthy process of scanning the forest for who or whatever the hell he was stalking. I scanned around but couldn't see anyone else, even from my high vantage point, and the sickening thought struck me that he might be looking for me. I remembered the rustling noises I'd heard in the woods when I first arrived, and then I thought back further and remembered something else. A white car that had followed too close behind me for most of my drive to the nature preserve. I'd been annoyed and a little freaked out at the time, but when I turned into the nature preserve parking area, the white car had passed me and driven on its way, and I hadn't thought anything more of it. Now I wondered, horrified, if this was the driver of that car, if he'd circled back and seen my parked car, alone in the lot, if he'd come in after me. I sat, paralyzed with fear, and watched the man for what felt like forever, but was probably another half hour or so. There was a heart-stopping moment when he paused right underneath my tree, and I was sure he was going to look up and find me, but he didn't. After a while, he seemed to give up on whatever plan he had in mind. I heard him say, "Fuck it," and he started heading back in the direction he'd come, the direction of the parking area. I stayed in the tree, wet with sweat and crying, until the sun came up a few hours later. Then I climbed down and, still terrified, gripping the little can of pepper spray on my keychain, I made my way as fast as I could to the parking lot. The man had been there. My windshield had been smashed with a rock, and someone had scraped all down the sides of the car with something sharp. Presumably, a giant knife that I'm lucky didn't end up in my chest. Thank God for the night vision goggles that let me see him before he could see me, and thank God for big trees with sturdy branches. This is the scariest thing that has ever happened to me, and what makes it worse is that had things gone down differently, I might not have been here to tell the story. Okay, first things first. I am a girl about 5 feet 7 inches and around 130 pounds. This happened to me about 3 years ago when I was in my early 20s and still a student, living in a very safe area. Growing up, I had loved martial arts, and having grown up in a small rural town, I'd take what I could get. Karate? Fine. Judo? Sure. Kung Fu? Why not? Taekwondo? Sign me up. I loved martial arts, I still do, because they helped me discipline my body and mind and grow my confidence. It had been a few years since I had moved out to my country's capital to study, and I had kind of fallen off the martial arts wagon at that point, with college taking up most of my time. I should also mention that at the time I lived with my younger brother and our cat. We lived on the first floor, the second floor for all my American people, right next to a military camp and a patch of forest that leads to a creek. On our back balcony, there was a circular metal ladder that would lead up to our balcony and the kitchen door, which, of course, we always kept under lock and key. Except for when the cat wanted to go out, when we'd unlock the door, and he would go down the outdoor metal stairs to find his cat friends and play. I commuted to my college every day by walking 30 minutes to a bus stop, then riding the bus for an hour, and then walking another 10 minutes until I made it to campus. And when it was time to go home, I'd have to do the same thing all over again, so as you can imagine, it was very tiring. I would be out of the house every day from 10 in the morning until almost 10 at night. So when I'd come home, I'd be tired. I don't believe in premonitions much, but I do believe in instinct, and for quite a while I felt like something was up with that patch of forest behind our apartment. I felt watched. Maybe it was the blackness of that patch of forest that made me feel uneasy, because there wasn't a single light there, and the outdoor ladder looked like it descended into an abyss. You could take 3 steps into that patch of forest, and you'd be under complete cover of darkness. It made me feel weird because even though I couldn't see anything, I knew that something was up. I had no proof, but I knew it. I was in class one Wednesday afternoon with my best friend at the time, and a professor came in to pitch an internship to us. Internships aren't very well known in my country, so professors actually have to argue their case about why, as students, we could benefit from this. My best friend, I'll call her Kay, was very interested, but when the professor listed off the requirements, she realized she couldn't apply as her GPA wasn't high enough. This led to Kay having a crying fit after the class was over, which led to a panic attack, and it got so bad that she called her boyfriend to come pick her up from campus. And since I didn't want to leave her alone, I stayed with her until her boyfriend showed up and got in his car with her. The conversation in the car was basically me and her boyfriend trying to console her and help cheer her up. I asked her if she'd like me to go over to her place so we could all hang out, but she said that she was okay and didn't want to put me through the hassle of commuting home the next day. She lives a full hour away by car, so 2 hours away by public transport. So it was decided that they would drop me off at my house and they'd go to theirs. We get to my house around 7 p.m., a full 3 hours before I normally come home. I hug her, tell her to text me if she needs anything. I thank her boyfriend and get out of the car, glad that I'll be home early for a change. I went in through the main entrance, climbed up the stairs to the first floor, and put my key in the lock. I opened the door and called out my brother's name like I always did and got no response. The house was dark except for one light in the room where the front door opened into, and eerily quiet. But I felt my stomach tie into a knot because even if I couldn't hear anything, I could feel that someone was there. And when my instinct talks, I listen. I turned right into the hallway that leads into our rooms, and I saw my brother's door slam shut hard as soon as I got in the hallway. My brother's room is on the end of the hallway on the left, facing my own room, which is on the right of the hallway. My first thought was that my brother had taken a shower and forgotten to get a towel, so he made a run for it from the bathroom, which is next to my room, in embarrassment. But then I heard muffled whispers coming from his room. It sounded hushed and pressing. I still had no reason to be afraid, but I was on high alert because I thought my brother and his friends were planning on jumping out of his room and scaring me, and I wasn't about to let them get the satisfaction. So I inched down the short hallway, through the darkness, and before I knock on my brother's door, I take a look at my room. It was a fucking mess. My mattress was off my bed. My clothes and my books were all over the floor, and my jewelry box was empty and thrown on my bed. All in all, it looked like a tornado had gone through there. And the hushed whispers in the next room sounded extremely pressing and anxious now that I was close, because though I had tried to tiptoe as silently as possible, my steps had been audible. I realized what was happening, and I went ballistic. At that moment, I fucking lost it. My fight or flight instinct kicked in, and it kicked fight into maximum overdrive. The words danger, thieves, fight hit me like a truck, and I threw my whole weight on my brother's door, busting that door down so furiously, you'd think it owed me money. I saw no one in the room, but it was also a fucking mess, and I knew what I had heard, so I ran to the balcony door. I ripped the curtain out of my way and went through the open balcony door, just in time to catch one of the thieves right after he jumped off the balcony ledge. Looking back on it, he looked like a normal guy. Black hair, normal height, athletic build, big earring on his left ear. But at the time, he looked like a fucking monster to me. A vile, putrid, home-invading, piece-of-shit thief monster. I started screaming unintelligible things as I saw him stumble around, obviously having hurt his legs, before he got back on his feet and ran away. They were gone. I was safe. But then it hit me. Where the fuck was my laptop? I ran into my room and tore the place apart looking for my laptop. It was gone. I started screaming and crying. The unfairness, audacity, and cowardice hit me like a steel toe to the stomach. I screamed and cried like I was in a Grecian tragedy. I am not rich by any means, and neither is my family. I had an old laptop, which was probably worth pennies secondhand. But I needed that laptop for my schoolwork, and without it, I couldn't finish my semester. Not to mention that I don't have many real-life friends, and the majority of my friends at the time were online. So if I lost that laptop, I lost them too. My laptop was lost, and so was I. I felt violated, dirty, and less than. I was afraid I'd throw up, or pass out, or both. I was taking such rapid and deep panic breaths that my vision began to blur. In the most panicked and grief-stricken state I've ever been in my life, tears streaming down my face, I called my mother to tell her what had happened, and she told me to call the police. It took me almost a full minute on the phone with the operator telling her again and again where I lived, who I was, and what had happened before she understood me, and said she'd send someone over. A few days later, I was talking with my mother about the incident, and she told me something that hit me hard. I come from a pretty much trilingual household, and she told me that when I called her that night, he couldn't make out what language I was speaking because I had been so panicked. Makes sense why I had to repeat myself over and over to the operator. I started running around the house like a lunatic, checking every door and every lock in a frenzy, until I got to the kitchen and saw that the window had been broken. Without thinking, I slammed it shut. Stupid, I know, but I was beside myself. I wasn't thinking straight. My brother came home a few minutes later, and when he came in, he saw me panicked, crying my eyes out and speaking almost unintelligibly. He came to the bedrooms, and he saw the damage and told me to go sit in the living room and calm down. I did as he said and tried to calm down, but I jumped at every sound and started crying worse, telling him I was sorry that I got home too late and that our laptops were gone. The house seemed so big to me at those moments, so dark and so hostile, and I felt so small and helpless. My brother called me over to my room and showed me a pillowcase full of something, and when we looked inside, we found both laptops, all my jewelry, fake, all of it, my old phone and some other stuff. They had been right in front of me the whole time, but I was so messed up that they didn't even register. The police eventually came about an hour later and did fuck all, so my brother and I took it to the police station and filed a report of the incident. And since I had seen half of one of the culprits' faces, they asked me to come in for an identification. They even sent over someone to dust for prints. Nothing ever came of it. The police said that since they didn't even have a backpack to put the loot in, and resorted to using one of our pillowcases, they were almost 100% junkies. We had the outdoor metallic ladder ripped off our kitchen balcony, much to my cat's displeasure, since that's how they got in. We also installed several motion detecting lights. For the next few months, I was constantly on edge, and every time I passed near some suspicious characters who hung around near my usual bus stop, I felt a violent rage boil in me. I caught myself looking for the man I had seen, ready to beat him within an inch of his life. But I never saw him or heard his creepy whisper again, and my brother and I moved away from that apartment a few months later because I never felt comfortable in that apartment again. I picked up kickboxing, and because it has made me stronger, it has helped me feel safer. And I also always carry a knife with me now. I still think back on that encounter and realize how fucking stupid I was. What creeps me out the most is knowing that that night, there had been nothing but a thin plywood door separating me from two potentially dangerous men. Even if I know that me busting in my brother's room like a lunatic is what scared them off because of how stupidly fearless I was, I also realize how bad it could have gone. They could have had guns. They could have had knives. They could have had pepper spray or a chain or whatever. And there were two of them and only one of me. And if they ganged up on me, even with the adrenaline having turned me into Doom Guy, I don't know how much of a chance I realistically stood against two men, high on whatever they were on, and desperate enough to break into an apartment and stuff loot in a pillowcase. Had they been willing to put up a fight, this would have ended very, very badly for me. What I do know is that I probably still would have busted in there like Doom Guy. So, to the creepy, cowardly bastards who dared break into my apartment and tried to rob me and my brother and ended up traumatizing me so bad I had to move, fuck you both. I hope for your fucking sake we never meet again, because I've been kicking that sandbag for 2 years now and picturing your face every single time. I'm a late 20s female, and this happened fairly recently. Nothing bad happened to me, but I'm lucky it didn't, and it easily could have. There is a conservation area that I used to like to walk in regularly. It's beside a golf course, near an ordinary subdivision, just off a busy road, and is popular with dog walkers and photographers. The conservation area is fairly well maintained, and alerts its users that there are hidden cameras everywhere. My point in bringing attention to all of this is to say that by all accounts, this is a very safe, vanilla urban wooded area in a populated area. One big thing about me is that I like isolation to recharge. I dislike crowded trails and, by convention, go in off-peak hours or when the weather is unpleasant. Not dangerous, but unpleasant. Too cold, lightly raining, foggy, etc. I stay safe, but I like there to be as few people around as possible. In a city, in daylight, I don't feel like I'm taking any risks by doing this. First encounter. There was one day I went at around 4 p.m. or so, on a frigid rainy Monday in November. On days like that, there are maybe only 1 or 2 dog walkers, but today, there was no car in the parking lot except for a dirty blue pickup truck with a man sitting in it. I noticed that he was looking at me, but that didn't really bother me. I was just happy to see the trail was empty. On this particular day, I went to the area to practice my navigation skills. I was learning how to use a compass at that time, and it's good to practice that skill in an area that you won't get lost in. So I decided to go off-trail to a big pine plantation, which is a big open area with large mature pine trees, if you are not familiar. It's not a hiking area or really that interesting in any way, and definitely off-trail. You wouldn't get there unless you really wanted to get there. So I pick my first landmark and sight it using my compass, and I'm pacing towards it. I find myself about halfway there when I hear rustling through bushes, and I turn around to see the man from the dirty blue pickup truck there entering the pine plantation. Mid-50s white man, a little pudgy, wearing a baggy beige cardigan and blue slacks. I feel pretty alert at this point. Feels out of place somehow. I take note, but pretend to keep walking around with my compass because I don't want to seem weird. I look at him. He pretends to ignore me. I'm getting a really bad gut feeling about the situation for some reason at this point, and I feel like he's following me. But I have an anxiety disorder, so I try to not freak out for zero reason, and I don't want to ruin my relaxation time. It's just a guy walking around. No big deal. To see if he's following me, I pivot 180 degrees and walk directly towards the trail again. He's still following me. I walk through the bushes, onto the trail, still following me. At this point, I was freaked out. The pine plantation entrance is only about 50 feet on the trail, so this guy would have walked 50 feet, entered the pine plantation, then decided that was it for the day. Bad odds. Definitely following me. I quickly exit the trail, and when I'm leaving the parking lot, I see that he's still looking at me. I take the long way home. The experience freaks me out, and I only visit the area once before the second encounter. Second encounter. This time was in January. This time I want to go bird watching. A week prior, I had seen an owl in the same pine plantation. I was practicing navigation again, and I wanted to see it again. I had seen it about an hour before sundown, so I figured that was a good time to try to see it again in the same area. I checked the parking lot, and there was no blue pickup truck, but there were two other cars with men. One was a red sedan with heavily tinted windows, and it looked like the other one was empty. So I go on the trail again. Today is muddy, wet, and cold. Area should be totally empty. Good. Unfortunately, not so. About 20 feet on the trail, I hear footsteps behind me. I don't like when people walk behind me, but it's not a crime, and I'll lose them soon when I go to the pine plantation. I'm sure you know where this is going. When I walk on the pine plantation, there is the same rustling of the bushes before, and when I turn around, I see the same man from before. I feel a wave of terror and dread overcome me, alone in a muddy forest with a possible stalker. But it's still so calm, and it feels so mundane. To confirm my fears, I walk over to the area where I saw the owl last week, and pause to look for it. Who do I see next to me but the same freaking guy from before? I am terrified at this point, and every part of me is screaming, "Run!" So I walk as fast as I can to the trail again. I pass some other random guy in the same pine plantation and smile at him, just totally on autopilot. He smiles back. It wasn't until I was in the parking lot where I got freaked out that there was a second person in the same pine plantation. Could they have been connected somehow? I stop briefly in the parking lot and take out a small notepad to quickly write down the license plates of the two cars. This gives the original man a chance to catch up to the parking lot. I'm booking it out, on foot, out of the parking lot, and he yells towards me, "Can I give you a ride?" And I just shake my head and keep walking. As I walk away, he begins to follow me in his car. He waits at the intersection to see which direction I'm going in, and I decide to walk in a busy park to lose him. He pulls into a nearby hidden driveway and stares at me and takes out his phone to presumably take a photo of me. He notes what direction I'm walking in, then does a U-turn and drives fast the other way. I took the long way home, filled out a police report, and the police opened an investigation on it. I have not gone back to the conservation area since, and the experience has definitely left me with an ongoing nervousness about being alone. Doubly more because I do not know who the second guy is. I passed him so quickly, I only know that he was in his mid-50s and had glasses and was bald. The police, unfortunately, told me there's nothing they can really do at this point. So the best I can do is stay vigilant and try to not let it freak me out too much. Unfortunately, this has totally ruined my love for going out into the wilderness alone. Nothing bad happened, but I think that was more because I was able to escape and lose him, them, before anything did. I was about 13 when my family went on our annual trip to Poland to visit family. My mother and father both come from a small rural village about 2 to 3 hours away from Warsaw. It's an idyllic little place that is surrounded by lush forest and wheat fields. Life is different there. Everyone is very carefree and relaxed. Being the small place it is, everyone knows one another since everyone essentially lives on the same street. I had made a bit of a reputation for myself there, being known as the American girl who visits in the summers, so whenever we would arrive, the whole village would know. I loved the attention. All the kids wanted to play, and adults doted on me. One of the townspeople I saw most frequently was Tomek. Tomek was a funny guy in his upper 20s who would work in the village deli store. He would always give me extra meat anytime my grandparents would send me out to pick food up or offer to show me inside the kitchen. I never took him up on that offer. The idea of seeing how my meat was made was too much for my 13-year-old mind. Though I didn't know it at the time, Tomek had the reputation of being the town lunatic. He wasn't a stranger to the police force or the villagers, as he was a bit of a petty thief. My grandparents told me when I got older that my grandfather had not once but twice caught him trying the doors of his shed, and then excusing himself when caught as drunk and unsure where he was. Despite this, I had never had a reason to fear or avoid him. The village had a tradition called Gra Odwagi, which translates to the game of courage, that would fall in between the dates of our visits. On this day, the village children would be set into teams and then given items to find that were hidden around the woods or village parameters. The event lasted all day, and the group that had the most found items would win a prize. The courage part of the game would be trying to attain the golden item, which would be in the woods and guarded by a few adults armed with water guns. The only way to get the golden item was to avoid being sprayed with water. If all members of a team were hit, then the team would lose the chance to attain it. My team consisted of my 4 friends, Eva, Arek, Bartek, and Pavel. Our strategy was to get as many of the items around town, and then try our luck at the golden object when it got darker, in order to be harder to spot. We got a lot of the items throughout the day, and worked up a good sweat after racing against the other children. Around 7 p.m., we had attained 12 items, and were ready to try our luck at the golden item. We had heard from the other children that the adults were being relentless, guarding the object with ferocity. The wooded area that was the destination as the golden item area was behind Erek's house. Therefore, he took the lead in devising the plan. Our plan was that we were going to split up into 2 teams. Arek, Eva, and Bartek were meant to grab the adults' attention and drive them away as far as possible, while Powell and I would sneak in and grab the item. Feeling confident, we headed into the forest as the sun was slipping from the sky. We followed the dirt path for about 5 minutes, and then stepped off it, following Erek as he navigated through the shrubbery with ease. He stopped us just as we reached a thick clump of bushes. Putting a finger to his lips, he motioned for us to look through the gaps in the shrubbery and see the adults. It was dark now, so it was hard to see who was actually guarding the items, but we could make out 4 shapes huddled together, chatting softly. Without hesitation, we moved into our plan of action. Our 3 friends navigated around and disappeared from our sight, only for us to hear their laughs and the voices of adults yelling to get them. Pavel and I watched as the adults raced after our friends, all abandoning the area they had stood around. I remember glancing around and getting ready to jump out of the bushes when I felt Pavel's arm on my shoulder and saw him make a shushing sound. "They might not all be gone. Wait a bit," he urged. We sat quietly, listening intently for any sounds. Then it happened, the slightest sound of something moving on the other side of the clearing. We couldn't make out who or what it was, so we stayed quiet, peering through the gaps of the shrubbery. Pavel saw it first. He pointed out what looked like a dark figure crouching behind a tree closest to the clearing. We watched as the figure moved tree to tree, never stepping out from behind, just simply observing. Just as I was about to suggest that one of us should cause a distraction, we heard a yelp and turned to see another team approaching, clearly happy that there seemed to be no one around where the golden item should be. We watched as this small group of 2 raced around the clearing but didn't pick anything up. I kept waiting for the adult to step out and spray the kids, but the figure remained crouched, half visible behind the trees. One of the girls approached the area the adult was in, but she was busy looking up at the tree, musing to her partner that maybe the object was put on a branch. We watched as she began pulling herself up the lowest branch, and I remember the way my stomach dropped when all of a sudden we saw the adult shoot out behind the tree, grab her leg, and start pulling her into the darkness of the forest. Her partner ran off screaming, leaving me and Pavel unsure what to do. We watched frozen with horror as the adult began covering the girl's mouth in some attempt to silence her. Before either one of us could do anything, all of a sudden, Tomek came running up the path and threw himself onto the man. Pavel shot out to help Tomek, while I ran back to call for help. When I reached the backyard that was the destination spot for the end of the game, I was screaming uncontrollably in a mix of words that took me a few attempts to get out that help was needed. A large group of the men raced toward the forest, while I hid in my mother's arms awaiting to see everyone arrive back safely. My friends, Arek, Eva, and Bartek, approached me cautiously and asked what had happened and why Pavel and I hadn't come back. It had turned out that after Eva, Bartek, and Arik had distracted the adults and drove them away, the adults had decided to end the time to get the gold item. They had assumed that everyone had a chance to try to get it and didn't want the kids wandering the forest after dark. One of the adults had already pocketed the item when they chased our group back towards the main backyard. My team had assumed that we would see that there was nothing there and return as well, which is why they didn't come looking for us. As I retold what happened, everyone in the backyard listened to me with wide eyes. About 10 minutes passed, and we saw the group of men coming back, Pavel walking beside his father, and the girl who had been attacked in the arms of her assumed father. As they all approached, I asked Pavel what had happened. As the parents gathered and talked in hushed voices, Pavel described to us how Tomek had beaten the guy bloody but let him escape when he turned away, surprised by the men that had arrived to help. He mentioned that a few men were still out scouting the forest land for the guy. I then asked the remainder of my friends why help was not sent earlier by the girl's partner that had run away screaming. Everyone had looked at me with blank faces, and the sudden realization hit me hard. The next events become a blur. It's a mix of me racing to my parents with my friends and asking about the girl, a frenzy of people calling out her name and begging her to come out, a whirlwind of everyone rushing to get their kids inside, and a mayhem of adults swarming together to go search the woods again and call the police. It's been 8 years now and she hasn't been found. Tomek was one of the main suspects, believed to be part of a two-man kidnapping operation, but backed out when he saw that too much attention was brought to the event. I'm not sure whatever happened to him, but I can't help but feel guilty that I didn't do anything to help either of those girls. I saw the girl run away. Pavel and I were the last to see her. Sometimes when I see a child with braided hair, I get thrown back to that night, and I can still see her braids swirling around her as her figure disappeared from sight. Hello, my English is shit, but I have a story for you guys. This took place around 2 years ago. I was driving to work, a 5-hour drive. It was already dark. About 3 hours into the drive, I started to get tired. I bought myself a coffee and some snacks at a gas station and went on. But snacks and coffee can only keep you awake for so long, and I started to feel tired again. This part of the road was nothing but thick, dark pinewood forest around me. No other cars on the road. Nothing, only insects smashing my windshield now and then, and an empty road. I was now extremely tired, and at one point I nearly drove off the road from almost falling asleep. I have to sleep now. I can't wait for a gas station. I need to stop as soon as I see a place where I can park my car. Anything. When I'm tired, I fall asleep really fast. If I'm tired enough, I can fall asleep in the middle of a sentence when I'm talking, so it's a bit urgent for me to find a place where I can stop. It felt like an hour, but probably just 5 minutes went by, and I spot this little pocket in the road. It's like a parking space for quick stops, like peeing, switching drivers, or stuff like that. Not even a real resting area. I stopped here and turned down my windows to check if I heard any weird noises. It was total silence, so I turned up the windows again. Nothing bad is going to happen. I haven't seen a car for like 30 minutes, and this road is empty. If someone is checking out my car, I bet it is the cops checking on me if I am alright. I leave my keys in the ignition, and I lock the doors just to be safe. I adjust my seat a bit to make it more comfortable to sleep in, and I take off my shoes and put them on the passenger seat, on the right. It is so nice to close my eyes, and I instantly fall asleep. I don't know why, but something wakes me up. I can't really see anything. Some kind of bright light hits me in the eyes. First I thought it was a flashlight, but then I realized it was the high beams from another car in my rearview mirror that were blinding me. I look in my left mirror and I see a dude walking up beside my car. Maybe he wants help with something? Should I make it clear to him that I'm in here? He is right beside my left back door. Should I step out and ask what he is doing? I didn't have to. The dude proceeds to jerk and pull on my left back door. I almost shit my fucking pants when I realize that he is trying to force his way into my car. My seat is adjusted for me to lay down, and I pushed it back max, but I can't reach the pedals, which makes it impossible for me to drive my car. I slam the car horn, and it breaks the silence with a roar, and the dude jumps. That gives me like 2 seconds to push my seat to reach the pedals, but it's still way out of adjustment, so I'm kind of pulling myself to the steering wheel because my seat is laying flat and isn't supporting my back. Anyway, I start my car and drive off with a cloud of smoke from my screeching tires. It's hard driving a car with nothing holding up your upper body, but I managed. As I leave, I look in the rearview mirror, and I can see how the dude stands there and looks at me, and I can see two more guys coming up beside him. What I can see in the silhouette of their beams, one of them has something in his hand, like a wrench or crowbar. I drove super fast, way over the speed limit. My whole body was trembling with adrenaline and fear. I drove like that for like 30 minutes, then I stopped at a gas station to fix my seat and put my shoes on again. I figured out I was only sleeping for like 10 minutes. Well, I didn't have to sleep until I got to my destination, which is surrounded by heavy-duty fencing, and the building has an alarm. I told my boss the next day, and he said they actually have problems with what we call it in Sweden, road pirates. Criminals that force you to stop on the road and rob you of everything, including your car. In that specific area, it could just be three nice dudes that wanted to check if I was okay. Then why didn't they just knock on my driver's window? The thing in his hand could be a big flashlight. Be safe. When I was 11, my family of 6 decided to make the move from suburbia to a lovely rural bungalow. I have 3 sisters aged 9, 12, and 18 at the time. We were all excited for the privacy and isolation of our new home. For once in our lives, we would have no neighbors and a large yard to play in. Our home had large picture windows, giving us a beautiful view of the farmland around us. My parents disliked curtains because there were no neighbors and they collect dust, so we all figured, what's the point? The summer there was so much fun. Every morning I would get up and take my dog for a walk around the woods in our backyard. I absolutely adored the feeling of being alone and was enjoying the freedom of all our new space. Fall eventually rolled around and I continued my routine of walking my dog, both in the morning and after school. I remember one morning while walking my dog, I began feeling uncomfortable. I was alone in the woods. There was no one around, but I still felt as though I was being watched. I had shivers down my back the entire walk, and for an 11-year-old, I just felt really strange. My dog was acting weird too. I kept trying to go farther into the woods, but she kept trying to pull me towards our shed. The shed rested at the very back of our yard, on the edge of the woods, where the trees thin out quite a bit. I didn't like how I was feeling, so I picked up my dog and brought her back to the house, and went on with my day. Days went by, and I just couldn't seem to shake this feeling of being watched. Especially when I was in my bedroom, which had a huge window in it that overlooked our backyard. The view of the woods that I had previously loved was beginning to scare me. I assumed it was just because it was fall and the forest started looking kind of gloomy. I started having nightmares about waking up in the middle of the night and seeing the figure of a man in our backyard. Weird things kept happening around our house. We all suddenly noticed that we were eating things like bread a lot quicker. Every morning half a loaf of bread would be gone, and my parents attributed this to their hungry growing children. One evening, I woke up and heard noises coming from our family kitchen, which was just down the hall from my bedroom. It sounded like someone had come home, and I assumed it was my oldest sister. The only thing that was strange was her footsteps sounded a lot heavier than they usually do. The noise stopped very quickly, and I was able to fall back asleep. In the morning, my mom asked me and my 2 sisters, 9 and 12 years old, if we woke up last night to make food. We all said no, and then I asked if it was my oldest sister. My mom told me that she stayed at her friend's house last night, and then thought it was probably the dog making noise. I was terrified. I knew I heard unfamiliar footsteps. That night I had a lot of trouble sleeping. I still felt like someone was watching me. Eventually I had fallen asleep, but woke up around 2:30 a.m. I heard noises in the house again. It was the same footsteps I had heard before. I stayed in my bed and felt paralyzed. I rolled over and faced the window, hoping that if someone came in my room, they'd think I was asleep. The noises stopped, and I closed my eyes as hard as I could. I told myself I was just imagining things and that monsters aren't real. About an hour must have gone by, and I eventually opened my eyes. When I looked out the window, I swear to God, I could see a man standing in our backyard watching our house. The photo contains a cheesy edit of where I saw him. I was terrified enough that I didn't move at all, and eventually fell asleep again. I was so relieved to wake up alive that morning, but was still terrified of our backyard. I ran into the kitchen to tell my mom what I saw and refused to walk the dog. I'm not sure if she really believed me at the time or thought I was having night terror hallucinations, which I did have quite often when I was younger. I went to school that morning. I was anxious all day. The last thing I wanted to do was go home. When I did get home, I saw police vehicles surrounding the house. They had the dogs with them and were searching our yard. They told us a man who had broken into another home and beaten the couple living there was suspected of being on our property. He stole their wallets, photos, and other small items of value. The biggest thing he stole was their car, which had been ditched 10 kilometers from our home. While searching our property, they found all the items from his previous break-in hidden around our yard. They also discovered that he had been hiding in our shed since his previous break-in. They said he had done this at the previous home prior to breaking in. He would spend time watching the house and observing the residents' routine until he knew it well enough to start coming inside the house. They said he had a long history of premeditated violence, including child abuse, and believed he was planning on eventually harming us. In the shed, they found wrappers, empty cans of food, and scraps. They told us he was definitely coming into our house for the food during the night. From the shed, he had a perfect view of our home and could see when we all went to bed. Although they searched our house and property with the dogs, they didn't find him. After that day, I realized that if you feel like you're being watched, you probably are. Some backstory. This was years ago. I was around 12 or 13. I grew up in a small town, technically a village, about an hour and a half away from a big city in the US. On summer days, my best friend and I would also venture around our woodsy neighborhood and do typical kid things. I had a little sister who was around 7 or 8 at the time, and she also had a little sister the same age. My friend's name was Sarah, my little sister Sammy, and her little sister Alex. We would occasionally let them tag along on our adventures, especially if our parents made us. Our favorite thing to do was walk to our other neighbor's house, we'll call them the Smiths, and use their trampoline. It was in our neighborhood, but the houses are pretty spread out with dense forest in between. We'd set off towards their place, and it was about a 20 to 30 minute walk, longer on the way back because we had to then go uphill. One day Sarah and I decided to let Sammy and Alex come to the trampoline with us. They weren't really allowed very far from our houses without an adult, or us with them. We played on it for an hour or two and decided we were thirsty or hungry, one of the two, and decided to head back to Sarah and Alex's house for snacks. We were almost back to their house, but the last stretch before their house was the longest amount of isolated road, with a creek flowing by and no houses lining the road, just dense forest. As soon as we cleared this area, we would be right on top of their house. As we're almost through the wooded part and we can see their house up ahead, a woman with short black hair and sunglasses is walking her baby in its stroller. She was walking towards us and would pass us soon. I didn't recognize her as someone who lived in our neighborhood, and I know everyone, but lots of people from surrounding neighborhoods take walks here because of the woods. She passes by us normally, but right after she does, she says, "Oh, hey kids, I'm a little lost. What road is this?" None of us were very alarmed. The neighborhood can be confusing, and plus she was a lady with a baby, not some scary, creepy man. We told her the name of the road, and she told us she was really